And we're live. How about that? From anywhere in the world. I'm telling you, I'm here with you every single day, Monday through Friday anyway, and a little bit sometimes on the weekends. Welcome everyone to the Trish Regan Show. AOC is in a little bit of trouble, shall we say. You know, it just keeps growing for her. It's like first the DOJ, now this one. We're going to get into what accusations are being leveled against the representative from New York in just a moment. But we also got to talk today about what's going on over at the FAA. Brand new, just coming out, a tape of someone who was allegedly a DEI activist at the FAA and wanted to make sure that certain groups were making it through the exams, allegedly gave the answers. And there's a tape recording of him telling everyone he's going to give them the answers. So that's causing some concerns, all happening as Rosie O'Donnell says she's moved to Ireland permanently. Lucky Ireland. Donald Trump had a few comments on that. We will discuss. Welcome. Good to have you here. We begin on AOC, accused of stealing, actually. This is kind of a biggie. There is a group coming forward, Americans for Public Trust, that's accusing her of some pretty serious stuff. Taking a look at this, being first reported in the New York Post. This is an ethics group, and they're basically filing this ethics complaint against squad member Alexandra Occasio Cortez, accusing her of misusing taxpayer funds on dance training. Americans for Public Trust, a private watchdog group that targets corruption, alleged the AOC tapped, no pun intended, into her member representational allowance. Apparently she gets $2 million a year to shell out $3,700 to Juan D. Gonzalez and another $850 to Bombazo Dance Company for what is being called training. Now, they say that this is not exactly kosher, shall we say, because you really can't have dance trainers as, something that your taxpayers are funding. So she's responding to this complaint, and she's like, oh, no, there's nothing there. She sent out this tweet, 100% wrong. None of this is taxpayer money. This is actually an FEC filing. Be loud and wrong about something else. Try again next time. And they're like, okay, honey, we gotcha, because now apparently you do have election expenses, and you're actually charging them to taxpayers, which makes this, you understand, guys, even worse. Taking a look here at this statement of disbursements, this would be coming from her members' representation fund, of which she apparently spent $1.8 million, just $200,000 short of the $2 million she's being allowed. And you can see that the Bombazo Dance Company and the Juan D. Gonzalez training, that's all on there. And she's trying to say, no, this is an FEC thing, which they're then saying, well, gosh, that makes it even worse, Alexandra Occasio Cortez. So is this just an accounting error, or is she actually really misusing funds? In their view, Americans for Public Trust is saying she misused the funds. She's using your taxpayer dollars for something that actually should be an election expense. And so it's coming at rather a bad time, I should say, for the Republican, the representative, we wish, no, we don't wish, the representative from New York, coming at a bad time because, you see, she's in the midst of being possibly charged for impeding government. This could actually be a criminal case against her, and it's something that the DOJ is actually looking into. They're possibly preparing a case against one Alexandria Occasio Cortez. Ilhan Omar would be in that group as well. We know already that Pam Bondi has come out against Letitia James, the AG of New York, has come out as well against Kathy Hochul and the head of the DMV in New York. And now she's looking at Alexandria Occasio Cortez because AOC is having webinars and seminars on how you need to avoid ICE. She says she's just doing this for her constituents and that it's all fine because these are her constituents. Now, apparently she doesn't seem to understand that the people who actually voted for her, the people who actually are here legally in this country voting, those are her constituents. But no, she's expanding the pool, shall we say. So already AOC is already worked up saying, oh my gosh, am I going to be targeted for this? Maybe she's trying to make something more of it, like trying to get ahead of the news cycle in a way so that she can play the victim. But she has sent a letter over to Pam Bondi wanting to know whether or not she is being investigated for this. And I can assure her that she is. Okay, let's just cut to the chase, right? She is, and we know that if they can prove this one out, they absolutely, positively will. So AOC now in new trouble. Again, this new lawsuit with this Americans for Public Trust saying, what the heck are you doing? Like, why are you taking dance classes and funding your dance classes and your partying effectively on the American taxpayer? And she's trying to say, no, actually, this isn't the American taxpayer. This is an election expense. So then they're coming back at her and they're saying, okay, this is even worse than we thought because it's an election expense. And yet it's being put, look at the documentation, again, on this member's representational allowance. So each member has a certain amount of money that they can spend on various things that they need for their office. She gets $2 million and she's out there using some of this money for these dance classes. So AOC may have actually just put herself into a worse situation by coming out and saying all this. And again, it comes as we see Pam Bondi basically saying, look, you know, you're in violation of the law. We saw Pam Bondi say this just recently, right? Against Letitia, against Kathy Hochul, and saying this is a new DOJ and that, you know, we're not going to stand for this kind of stuff anymore. And so I think, you know, when it's all said and done, AOC is going to find herself in a very challenging spot. Yes, there is a bit of a spotlight on her, but she ought to be able to deal with it. I mean, I think Donald Trump certainly had a spotlight onto him for however long, 4 years, well, really 8 years, and he still has it. And, it was courtesy of one, oh, you know the soundbite, I got to play it, one Letitia James.
He's called me venomous.
We will fight back to your attempt to bring Trumpism to New York City.
He's called me disgraceful.
Of the fact that they stole the Supreme Court seat. An illegitimate president and an illegitimate member of the United States Supreme Court.
He's called me radical.
Listen, yes. We know he's crazy. Yes. We know he doesn't have a sound mind. Yes. We know he's out of control. Yes. We know he's losing it. Yes. We know his days are numbered and we will come together.
He's called me a racist.
We've got to stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale.
Okay, so I only play that. And Unc Andy, thank you for your generosity. Much appreciated. Oh, you knew she was a shady lady, right? Who knows? I mean, I think it certainly sounds sketchy, though. And she's being accused of something pretty darn serious. And I would just say, listen, you got to live a pretty clean life. If you're the representative AOC from New York, I'd recommend that Jasmine Crockett do the same, especially with the spotlight now on her. In fact, in some ways, they're kind of transferring all their love for AOC onto one Jasmine Crockett, who's being viewed, believe it or not, as the future of the party. But I would just say, look, AOC, you can go and try and explain this one away, but I think you've effectively been caught on tape saying exactly what is incriminating. The fact that you're out there trying to defend people that you believe are your constituents who really aren't. I mean, we can have that debate all day long, but the federal government does have control over who is in this country. They have control over the borders. And so you trying to explain it away on one NPR is not going to work.
You had a recent dispute, if that's the right word, with Tom Homan, the president's Homeland Security czar, so-called. You held an online forum, a Know Your Rights forum, that he didn't like. What were you doing? What was your goal as you saw it?
My job is to educate and act as a liaison of critical information to my constituents. And I was informing all of my constituents of their constitutional protections, and in particular, their constitutional protections against illegal search and seizure in the United States.
Takes him a minute.
Homan was upset, I suppose, because he felt that you were giving advice to people who were here illegally. Mm-hmm. Were you?
I was giving advice to all of my constituents. Yeah. He
said he was going to report you, or even that he did reach out to the Department of Justice. Have you heard from the Department of Justice?
I have not, and I intend on reaching out to the Department of Justice to inquire.
Really? What would your question be for the Department of Justice?
Well, there is a member of the Trump administration who is threatening and seeks to open an inquiry, and are you going to do it?
That would be Tom Homan.
What would you learn? What do you hope to learn from that exchange?
I think it's important to know where this administration stands and if they intend on using political intimidation to silence their critics.
Well, I think she's pretty nervous now. I think that, when you add all this up, one, she could be in a lot of trouble, serious ethical trouble because of some of the accounting or lack of accounting that's being done on her campaign or within her office. You combine that with her complete flagrant disregard for the actual law, where she's more concerned about the quote-unquote constituents that are not here in the country legally. It all adds up to problems for one AOC, and I think that these problems are not going to be going away for her anytime soon. I'm, again, looking at some of your comments. Hello, good to have you guys all here, and let me see, Unc Andy, who had a funny comment just saying, that she's always been sort of a bit on the shady side. I'm laughing about that. I don't know. I think that the woman is, when we say shady, I do think that there's a hunger there from some of these political representatives that suggests that they're willing to say and do anything in order to get themselves elected. Don't forget what she was doing with Tom Bowman, who, by the way, didn't get elected. Some people have joked that, all those dance lessons must have been so she could go run around stage. Remember when she was doing all that crazy dancing on stage with that guy who was the alarm puller? Remember how he pulled the fire alarm because he didn't want to have a vote on the budget? I mean, it's like we're in 5th grade or something. And he never went to jail for that one. He absolutely should have, in my estimation. I question whether any of that was legal. I mean, if they're misusing taxpayers in such a crazy way where they're giving, $22 billion to some of these NGOs for environmental reasons, I'll tell you, this is all changing and it's stopping. Lee Zeldin found some of this out with Stacey Abrams because Stacey Abrams apparently was running some organization that was part of this, like under this umbrella of Power Forward Communities, and she got $2 billion in your tax money in 2024. Interesting timing, right? So that you could go out and buy everybody new appliances. What's that about? I mean, this is an organization that basically didn't even know how to fill out its own accounting forms. This is an organization that was just kind of created as a pop-up. You can call it a pop-up NGO. And then it gets all this money. It seems a little shady, does it not? And here is Stacey Abrams, much like AOC, sort of implicating and incriminating herself. She went on to MSNBC to justify it the other day. And now Lee Zeldin, head of the EPA, who, by the way, we're going to get to what he just announced, is cutting all these regulations, getting rid of all this red tape in hopes of bringing energy prices even lower. Here's Stacey Abrams really kind of implicating herself in all of this.
One of the ironies of the attack on you, and I'm going to play what he did, was that my understanding is the program at the source of this whole thing is a program to lower costs for people. Do I have that top line correct?
You have it absolutely right.
Okay, so I'm gonna play what he had to say, and then I'm gonna ask you to explain what the program is that was such an obvious, ludicrous laugh line for the Republicans there. Take a listen.
$1.9 billion to recently created Decarbonization of Homes Committee, headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. Have you ever heard of her?
Okay, so what is this organization? What is your relation to it, and what does it do?
In 2023 and 2024, I led a program called Vitalizing DeSoto. We worked in a tiny town in South Georgia to demonstrate that by replacing energy inefficient appliances with efficient appliances, you can lower your cost. And in fact, we accomplished that. For 75% of the community, they got appliances that are lowering their bills right now. We had one woman who saw her electric bill cut in half from $180 to $98. That's what we delivered. And based on that program, a coalition of organizations, famous organizations, came together and said to the EPA, if we can do this here, we can do this for millions more Americans. Let us invest the money of America in lowering the cost for Americans. And the EPA said, okay, great, go for it.
So the concern is that she was buying votes, okay? I'll give you a new stove and you vote for Democrats because we're all about all these giveaways, this, that, and the other. I mean, that's basically what they're trying to get at. And they're looking at some of these forms, right? Like here's the United Health form getting $7 billion, massive amount of money, like the biggest that has ever been pumped into anything after filling out a 49-page form, and most of it's kind of blank. So lots of questions here. It comes just as we learn, and this is New York Post is reporting this, Biden actually pumped $300 billion apparently into the economy just before the election in hopes that it would make the economy look a little bit better instead of actually doing the hard work, right? Doing the things that you need to do to make things look better. I mean, look, it's been a little bit wild, right? The last 48 hours, we've had a market that's gone up, down, and all around. And what did I say? Keep a clear head. Make sure that you think about what actually does matter in the long run. And as an investor, and as long as you're not in and out in a day, right? As long as you have a long-term approach, you're going to be better off. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary, I should point out, at 76 Research. So proud of that. Look at these portfolios, up, 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 up. And by the way, over the last couple of days with all this craziness, we actually have been beating the S&P, continuing to beat the S&P, because we don't get sucked into the insanity of it all. And I mean that. There's a certain kind of insanity. Take a look at those portfolios. You can also go to 76research.com. 76research.com. Use code word dollar so you get the 76 report for just $1 a month. We actually just came out, I should point this out, with a new pick. This is interesting because this stock just got beaten down so badly over the last couple of days. We just added it to our American Resilience portfolio. So take a look at some of that if you get a second today. Again, 76portfolios.com or 76research.com. Use code word dollar. Lee Zeldin, you just heard some of his comments. He was concerned about some of the things that Stacey Abrams may or may not have been doing. Well, he came out just moments ago and announced that he's getting rid of a ton of regulations. Like, this is amazing. This is amazing. Donald Trump wants to bring down energy costs, and his solution to doing that is actually reducing the amount of regulation that you have within the energy industry so you can open things up and that we can drill. I mean, the left is going crazy. This is their nightmare. Listen to Lee.
Today, I'm pleased to make the largest deregulatory announcement in U.S. history. The Environmental Protection Agency is initiating 31 historic actions to fulfill President Trump's promise to unleash American energy, revitalize our auto industry, restore the rule of law, and give power back to the states. EPA will be reconsidering many suffocating rules that restrict nearly every sector of our economy and cost Americans trillions of dollars. Our actions include the Biden administration's deeply flawed Clean Power Plan 2.0, mercury and air toxic standards, Quad O BC, particulate matter 2.5, light, medium, and heavy car and truck rules, NESHAPs, and the so-called social cost of carbon. To advance cooperative federalism, EPA
I mean, you had me at the social cost of carbon. Lee Zeldin, new head of the EPA. He's like just getting rid of all of it. This was Donald Trump's platform right from the beginning, right? Because he wants oil prices coming down. And just the mere thought of this, by the way, has had oil prices coming down, something he alluded to today in an earlier press conference. He was there with the head of Ireland. We'll get to the comments about Rosie a little bit later on because they're well worth hearing. Very funny stuff. But here he is saying, you know what? When you actually get rid of some of this regulation, you have the ability to bring down oil prices. And when you bring down oil prices, guess what? You start to reduce inflation. For some reason, these Democrats can't figure it out.
What I'm very happy with is oil is down to $65 a barrel. And that's faster than I would have anticipated. We put on the gas, we stepped in the gas in order to get oil. And with what's happening. So we're getting that down. And when energy comes down, prices are going to be coming down with it. So in a very short period of time, we've done a very good job.
Indeed, right? I mean, you saw the CPI news out today. CPI coming in at 2.8%. Let me see if I have, I'm going to get to that because I get some great graphics I want to show you because this is really 2.8%. I mean, it's up 2.8%, but everybody thought it was going to be 3 or higher. Everybody thought that, now that Trump is in there and he's talking tariffs and this, that, and the other, there's no way that inflation would actually come down. And what do you know? It came down. I don't know what the Democrats are going to do for talking points now. But, the reality is they're thinking about things. They're thinking about things in a really smart way. And whether it be the EPA or the Department of Education, they want to get rid of the red tape. So that's the latest and greatest. You may have seen the Department of Education employees were told they had to clear out their desks last night. It's over. He's getting rid of them, most of them anyway. Linda McMahon, who's the new head of the Department of Education, formerly, well, she may still, I mean, her family owns it anyway. She was an executive for years and years at the WWF, the WWE, whatever they call it, the wrestling thing, right? She's a great lady. I've known her many years. She's here on Laura Ingram's show on Fox talking about this whole process. This is a big deal. The Department of Education went in the 70s, around 76 with Jimmy Carter, and it took a lot of the power away from the states, put it in the hands of the federal government. And Trump's like, no. We want the states to run this baby.
Madam Secretary, great to have you in studio today. All right. First, welcome to the show, because you haven't been on in studio with me before. Now, is this the first step on the road to a total shutdown?
Yes, actually it is, because that was the president's mandate, his directive to me, clearly is to shut down the Department of Education, which we know we'll have to work with Congress, to get that accomplished. But what we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat. And that's not to say that a lot of the folks, it's a humanitarian thing too. A lot of the folks that are there, they're out of a job. But we wanted to make sure that we kept all of the right people and the good people to make sure that the outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met. And none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
So that was my next question. So the criteria for keeping that 50% is related to expenditures and key programs?
Correct. Congress appropriates the money that is going through Title I, through IDEA programs.
What's that stand for?
You know what? I'm not sure I can tell you exactly what it stands for, except that it's the Programs for Disabled and Needs.
Individuals with Disabilities Act, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know all my acronyms. I've been here for 30 years.
This is my fifth day on the job, and I'm really trying to learn them very quickly.
Right, it's a lot. So reports today said that the buildings were going to be closed for security reasons. What does that mean?
Well, when people left today and they got their notification to take their laptops and their phones home with them, and we didn't want part of the people who were being permanently let go and those who are remaining to some of them show up to work tomorrow morning.
That's standard corporate
practice.
So
it's just standard corporate practice that we just locked the doors and said for those that are coming back, we'll know that they'll be coming back on Thursday morning.
Were people given a chance to take any personal effects?
They were told that they will be allowed to come back. We would arrange for them to come back and take their personal effects with them. And to say goodbye to
basically,
folks, too.
They're gone. Okay? So they're getting rid of the whole Department of Education. If she's successful at her job, she's actually going to literally get rid of everything. Now, it's interesting because in some ways, Donald Trump loses a little bit of power. Remember that little dust up with Maine recently where he said, hey, you're not going to get any federal funds, Maine, unless you actually play by the rules. And our rules mean you cannot have people that were born as males competing in girls' sports. And Maine was like, I'll see you in court. So he's losing a little, but that's actually his mentality, right? Because if you fully believe in a smaller government, then you do actually want to turn that power back over to the states with the thinking that the states can do what they want. It's their problem, right? They can fund education, they can come up with their own standards, and they can hold themselves accountable as opposed to making it be a big bureaucratic machine. Well, the bureaucrats don't like this. One, Randy Weingarten, who is the former head of the teachers union, right? The whole American Federation for Teachers, and maybe she still is. Anyway, Randy Weingarten going all over MSNBC's airwaves as much as she can to have a complete hysterical meltdown. I mean, she's really worked up. Watch.
This is why so many people are so mad about it, because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry,
no,
I'm
do
really
not
angry about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to hear.
I taught kids in Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, New York.
Is it really about the kids, Randy, or is it about you and the teachers? I'm curious, because I look around, and it was actually the poorest communities that went back to school the latest, thanks to teachers' unions in 2020 and well into 2021. And I look at the test data, and it's the kids in the poorest communities that are always suffering the most, who have, by the way, the most powerful teachers' unions. So you know what? Get it out of the hands of the federal government. Let the states deal with it. Let's create a more level playing field and put more responsibility on the places that can try and get it right. Don't, again, tell Randy, because Randy is just, I mean, she's a mess, right? Like this is her worst nightmare, all coming true.
We know, for example, what Texas would do.
Right.
They'll use it for vouchers. So they won't give it to the kids who have it now. They'll just give it for vouchers.
Catholic schools, religious schools.
And frankly, what we're seeing in all the programs that are now extant in terms of vouchers, they don't work for kids. They basically go right now. It becomes a tax credit for people who already are sending their kids to private schools. So it's income redistribution.
Woo! Okay, so she really doesn't like voucher schools. And you know the reason for that. They don't want you to have any choice in anything. They want to indoctrinate you into everything that they believe. And gosh almighty, we can't possibly allow your kid to use that money and go to a Catholic school or a religious school or any kind of private school. I mean, it's really kind of shocking how much they think they know everything, right? They got it. They know better. For school might be in your community because, listen, I mean, you might actually have the chance now. You might actually be able to make the decision on their own. And I think that's what's so darn threatening, right? That's what's so darn threatening to these people in the Department of Education. God forbid that you as an individual might actually be able to choose the kind of education your kid is getting. This is exciting. This is an exciting time. I'd love to see vouchers. I love putting, the money back in the hands of the people. I mean, if you're a poor family, think about, she's, it's all going to billionaires. No, it's not, Randy. You know what? If you're a poor family and you have to go to the local school down the street because you don't have a choice, but now all of a sudden the Trump administration says, we're going to give it back to the states, and states like Texas, hey, they'll say, you know what? You can take this money, this however much, what do they spend per kid, $50,000, and you can actually put it into the school of your choice. Wouldn't that actually require the public schools to be more competitive? All of a sudden now, there's demand that, it's a market. You introduce a little marketplace economics, and maybe you'll actually get some better opportunities on the education front. And that's what terrifies them. Really and truly. Unbelievable. Remember to subscribe, share, like. Yes, I'm here. You guys are laughing. Like, Trish, don't you ever take a vacation? I guess the short answer is no. I don't. I really don't. I mean, especially right now. I think it's just too important a time. So do me the favor of subscribing, liking, sharing, all that good stuff. I'll tell you, this caught me by surprise today. This one was surprising, even for me. Now, I'm a big believer in Trump's economic policies, but I'm also a realist, and I recognize that there are going to be some bumps and challenges along the way because they're talking about really instituting some systemic change. And whenever you do something like that, right, there's going to be winners and losers. It's another reason why I think you need to be really smart about investing. Plug for 76 Research. But this one was really good news today. So inflation came down to 2.8%. And most people thought it was going to stay up around 3, maybe even higher. So this just blew everyone away. And it's really, really, really good news. I mean, inflation taming is exactly what we want and need. The market loved this, right? So you saw the market reversing course with the S&P ending up higher. And then you saw CNN actually having to admit it, which kind of I got a little bit of a kick out of. But first, before I get to that, take a look. Ooh, am I still in the shot? There we go. This is a really fascinating graphic. It shows you where we are, 2.8%. Did you see how high it went under one Joe Biden all the way up to 9.1%? Forgive me, I think I said 9.6% yesterday. But it was a train wreck under Joe. And even though it was going down, it was cumulative. So even when we say 2.8% today, it's on the heels of last year, right? So you have to remember that as you look at all of this data points. But nonetheless, it's really good. And it's so good that CNN had to admit that it was good. So this is worth seeing.
Finally, we have some good news on the economy and really the number one issue for many Americans, the cost of living. So we just learned that consumer prices in February increased by 2.8% year over year, 0.2% month over month. Both of these figures were a step in the right direction, and both were better than expected. So this is definitely very encouraging to see, because it's going to, I think, relieve some fears that inflation was perhaps re-accelerating, because this actually breaks a streak of 4 straight months where I think you could see it on the chart all the way to the right, where the inflation rate was going in the wrong direction, right? It was going higher and higher. Finally, we're seeing it dip.
Yay! Okay, so this is good news. Thank you, Lou, for the generosity. Much appreciated. Lou Maldonado. I think I said that right. Forgive me if I didn't. Anyway, the reality here is the economy is actually, in my estimation, going to get a whole lot better. Now, does it get there overnight? I'm not so sure about that. I was very impressed with this inflation number. I got to tell you, this was better than I expected. But it's like they can't admit it. They came up with this idea the other day when the market got kind of crazy because of the tariff talk that, oh, Trump is bad for markets. And it's all billionaires, and they're like going to pocket everything. And this is the narrative that they're going with over and over and over and over again. Like all of a sudden, MSNBC is talking about the economy and markets. And they're saying the same thing. Trump is bad for markets. He's not, by the way. He's not at all. Certainly not for my investments. Again, 76 Research. But here's the representative out of Texas, and you can see they're stuck on something here.
We're trying to talk directly to the American people about our positive vision for the future, but it's based on data. The American people can see that Donald Trump was given an economy that was on the way up. We had come from the pandemic, worked our way through that, stock market, inflation going down, stock market going up. It's completely inverted now. Stock market crumbling, consumer confidence declining. That's the Donald Trump legacy. That's what Donald Trump's economy and his tariffs, on again, off again, all of that uncertainty, the American public, they may not follow every in and out, but they know that these guys are not fighting for them. And so I appreciate the DPCC and Leader Jeffries offering an opportunity for us to get our message out in a different format.
Okay, like you guys have any economic message at all. I don't even think you understand what the economy is. You don't understand what GDP is. So for the record, S&P did close higher. And right now, S&P futures and Dow futures are up as well. So I think that's not really going to work. But here's the thing. Donald Trump's like playing a long game, right? He's playing a very long game. He's not playing for this week or this month. He's playing for the future of your children, my children, and the rest of, the rest of America. I mean, this is sort of monumental what he's trying to accomplish. He outlined this in an interview with Maria Bartiromo, my former colleague, and this is what they glommed onto because he didn't cheerlead the stock market, and they just can't let this one go.
You said, look, we're going to have a disruption, but we're okay with that. Is that what you meant? The stock market going down was the disruption? What other disruption were you alluding to?
Look, what I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year perspective. We have a quarter. We go by quarters.
That's true.
And you can't go by that. You have to do what's right. What we're doing is we're building a tremendous foundation for the future. Tremendous foundation.
The tremendous foundation for the future is something that could be bumpy along the way, and they're going to try and basically get him at every turn. Whenever the stock market ends lower, it's his fault. And, when the stock market ends higher, they're going to credit themselves. I don't know. But, let me just say, when you're listening to Whoopi Goldberg on the stock market, we got a problem.
This helped send the market into free fall yesterday, which some MAGA folks are blaming on the Biden economy.
Oh, boy.
So let me just remind you about the Biden economy, okay? The economy added 16.6 million jobs, and gross domestic product grew 12.6. They are the only administration in history to have created jobs every single month.
Yes.
They achieved...
Yes. Whoopee. That's not entirely, would anyone here, I'm curious, I'll ask the question to the group here, where you would actually say the economy was under Joe Biden. Did you actually think that was a good economy in any way, shape, or form? That was not rhetoric. They were trying to say, and all through the whole campaign, they were trying to basically act that we were the crazy ones. They were gaslighting us all the time. Somehow it was, our own insanity if that we thought for any moment in time that somehow inflation wasn't all that bad. And it's like, no, inflation is that bad. I mean, I can go back to the chart I just showed you, right? This one, okay? Inflation, I'm off camera, but whatever. You guys know where I am. That's really a bad inflation chart because that 40-year high of 9.1%, listen, you know who that was? That was none other than one Mr. Joe Biden. So you can sit there and pretend all you want on all this stuff, but it's not happening, okay? The rest of the public is where we are. And look, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. Howard, let me just go to the Commerce Secretary, because I thought he did a really good job sort of articulating just exactly what's at.
By then, however, the Dow had tumbled another 1%. Since Thursday, it has fallen more than 2.5%.
The markets are going to learn. Let the deal maker make his deals.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick brokered today's truce with the Ontario Premier.
What is really being accomplished with all of these 1 or 2 day tariffs that end up getting yanked?
Well, when you're negotiating with someone and they're not paying attention and they're disagreeing, the president, who's the best deal maker ever to sit in that chair, is going to say, here's my response. And then all of a sudden, shockingly, they respond.
And yet the prospect of an aggressive trade war has prompted both J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs to bump up the risk of a recession this year.
Will these policies be worth it if they lead to a recession, even a short-term recession?
These policies are the most important thing America has ever had.
So it is worth it.
It is worth it. I don't think the only reason there could possibly be a recession is because of the Biden nonsense that we had to live with. These policies produce revenues.
So you're saying when it looks chaotic and unpredictable from the outside, that there actually is a master plan when it comes to these tariffs?
It is not chaotic. And the only one who thinks it's chaotic is someone who's being silly. He said reciprocal tariffs.
Nobody expected him to announce 50% tariffs this morning.
He needed to break some guy in Ontario who said he was going to tax American energy 25%. The president of the United States in the White House says, oh, no, you won't, and breaks him. And you think that's chaotic?
And look, you have to be willing to break a little glass along the way, right? And that's what's going on. And let's hope it goes on. Because listen, I think there's some great stuff ahead. I really do. For our economy, I'm excited about it. I think that much can happen. But you know what? I'm just going to say this. Congress has to get its act together, right? We need to be a united front. We need Republicans doing the right thing. The reality is Bidenomics took us way back, despite what Whoopi Goldberg says. And there's some tricky stuff coming up. I'm just going to point this one out because it's reality. These tax cuts that we got, the Trump tax cuts, they're due to expire. So that would actually mean that families would be paying $1,500 more in taxes next year. And this, go to their website, look at the testimonials, use my name, you get 35% off with my name, plus free shipping, plus full-on money-back guarantee, no harm, no foul. If you use code word Trish, it helps the show, it helps me, it helps you. So we thank our friends over at Balance of Nature for keeping me in good shape and hopefully keeping you in good shape too. Libs are losing it right now over this Tesla thing. So Donald Trump was kind of annoyed that there were these violent attacks happening at Tesla dealerships, and understandably annoyed, right? Like, I'm annoyed seeing it too. Anytime you see a destruction of property, that's never a good thing. First Mate, thank you so much. Appreciate the generosity. First Mate, that's kind of funny because I'm on a boat. I'm on a ship. Anyway, these libs are like, whoa, how dare he turn the White House into a showroom of sorts for these cars. It was kind of funny, actually. He's good at it, right? He's a good salesperson. So keep in mind the backdrop of what's going on. First of all, X came under a cyber attack. So Elon was kind of upset about that. And then Tesla and the dealerships have been coming under attack. I think we have some video. See, this is 44 wheels were stolen from Teslas in League City parking lot. This is from a local affiliate. So they've had these issues, and there's some violence that's being directed at Tesla dealerships and being directed at people driving Tesla cars. In fact, I know people in my sort of liberal neck of the woods that I live in New England that have gotten rid of Teslas and actually taken big hits. I mean, because they're not really thinking economically speaking. So they've taken hits on their Teslas just because they hate Donald Trump so much. So you get Tesla fully under attack, and Donald Trump's like, you know what, to heck with it. I'm going to show my support. I'm going to buy a Tesla. And so he invited all the different trucks and cars, the Cybertruck, all to come into the White House. And they had, gosh darn it, a full-on car show.
That's pretty good. It'll look beautiful. Okay? I'm going to look at this. I'm going to make a decision. Do you want to hear what my decision is?
Let's see it.
Okay. What's the best of these cars? What do you think?
Well, the car that I drive is the Model S flat.
Which is that one?
The red one in the middle.
I like that, yeah.
Okay, so they're taking a look. They're doing the walk, right? The line. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we thank you for that. You can't see the video that we're looking at. But he's talking to Elon. He's taking a look at this.
50%, is that going to go into effect on Canada or not? The 50% tariffs?
They're asking about tariffs.
I'll let you know about it.
Okay.
I'll let you know. Let me go back to looking at my cars. Okay, so this is really interesting, the reaction that you see in the liberal media. And I have to show it to you because it's worth understanding. Again, remembering that there have been violent attacks on Tesla. Donald Trump came out and said, listen, if there's violent attacks on a business, any business, I consider that a form of domestic terrorism. And they go crazy, like crazy. Here's that guy who looks just like Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, Donald Trump bought a car from his buddy, or at least he said he did. Who knows, right? Right off the makeshift Tesla lot they set up in front of the White House. What does this have to do with the American people and their interest, public interest? Couldn't tell you. When Trump was asked what to do about the people targeting Tesla cars in dealerships, here's what happened.
Some say they should be labeled domestic terrorists.
I will do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company.
You're either with the Tesla or you're with the terrorists. That's one way to try to stabilize an oligarch's business empire.
Come on. I mean, really, they're resorting to that. And it's a talking point, by the way. It's totally a talking point because that wasn't the only show on MSNBC to do that. There's another one. I don't even know who these hosts are. That one's just the one that looks like Rachel, right? And these hosts are saying the exact same thing. So clearly, they got their direction.
But then you also overnight have this post claiming that protests at Tesla dealerships are illegal. He said today he would label violence against dealerships domestic terrorism. Now, you know I am judicious in how I play this sound, but I think you need to hear it from him.
Mr. President talks about some of the violence that's been going on around the country at dealerships. Some say they should be labeled domestic terrorists.
I will do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company. Let me tell you, you do it to Tesla and you do it to any company.
So just to be clear, you protest a private company, you are labeled by this administration a domestic terrorist.
So did she not hear the part about the violence, right? If there's violence against a company, then that is a form. It's not a protest. How did protests suddenly become violent and like that was okay? Kind of reminds me of summer of 2020, right? When, they were looting and they were burning things down and somehow those were just protests. Peaceful protests. Peaceful protests, my you-know-what, all right? MSNBC, get real. If there's suddenly torch in your building, if there's like graffiti all over your building there at Rockefeller Center, you're going to call that a peaceful protest? Don't you want somebody actually protecting you? No, that's violent, right? When you have violence in the picture, that becomes something totally different. But they just can't let this one go. On and on and on and on. It's sort of weird how much they have grown to hate Elon Musk. And I'm looking at your comments, and it's true, you guys. You're right. Like, they used to love Elon, right? Like, Elon could do no wrong. Tesla was the greatest thing. And now all of a sudden they want to get rid of their Teslas. They hate the company. They want to boycott the company. They want to cancel the company. Well, those days are over, okay? And you know what? When you're talking about violent protests, they're violent protests. You can spin it however you want. I almost said lady that looks like Rachel. Man that looks like Rachel. And the other lady, I don't even know who she is. And then they're over on CNN. And you know what? This Scott Jennings, he deserves a raise. He deserves a huge raise because he has to sit there with these idiots and remind them of basic things like, oh, Tesla employs people. Tesla actually helps Americans. They see this as all some kind of oligarch move by Elon. Here we go.
So you have plenty of time, and you claim you have plenty of time. The problem is that the Republican messaging right now continues to be workers, Americans, you're going to feel a little bit of pain. And Americans have been feeling pain. That's why Democrats lost the election. That's why Democrats lost everything. Trump promised that he would end up lowering costs, that he would have a better economy, that he would get us out of the war in Ukraine. He promised all of these things, and he hasn't done it. And instead, which I think was a terrible PR move, and Scott, I'm assuming you agree, because as a Republican strategist, you wouldn't have advised him to go in front of the White House and drive a Tesla.
Wait, why?
Because
of course I would have. You know why? Because if I were advising a Republican president, I would say,
let's support American companies that have thousands of American workers and thousands more workers who make indirect products for it. Yeah, I think it would be a good idea if American companies did well under my
Okay, so you're going to go ahead and support a billionaire but not support the American worker and not necessarily
Who do you think makes Teslas, Sochi? American workers. It's good if
But it's
Tesla
very
does
much
well,
as
American
Jana
God, they're such socialists. It's just hard to watch. It's really, really hard. It's like when I was in the newsroom back in San Francisco, this is like 20 some odd years ago, and Enron was going down, and they started cheering, literally cheering. And I'm like, guys, like Enron actually employs a lot of people. And Enron is actually a staple in most American 401ks, and they forget they have this total disconnect, right? Because they just hate business and they hate billionaires, unless, of course, they're their own. I mean, they love George Soros, right? This is breaking right now, and this is very concerning. There is some concern about a particular tape that has just been released. There allegedly is this DEI activist that was employed by the FAA. You know, of course, that the FAA has come under fire because there's fear and concern that we don't have the most talented people in those jobs, and we haven't been able to recruit the most talented people for those jobs. But there was an effort that began back in the Obama era and continued on through Biden to make sure that we had more diversity, equity, and inclusion there. And that apparently became the biggest priority over some other things, like actually making sure that you had the most qualified people for the job. And so this is suddenly getting exposed. This is a brand new story coming to us actually out of the Daily Mail that had the exclusive on this. They actually had the air traffic controller with an audio tape. This is, again, allegedly him giving the answers to people that were applying for the jobs. It is believed these were minorities that were applying for air traffic controller jobs, and he wanted to make sure that they had the correct answers and actually left a voicemail about this. So this is an ongoing investigation. They're going to have to get more information. The story first being reported by Daily Mail. I have the tape. So I want to show you right here. This is this DEI activist at the FAA promising that he's going to come forward allegedly with these answers for people. Let's listen to it.
Washington Suburban Associate members, brothers and sisters, listen. It's been a really busy time for me these past 4 days. I know that each of you are eager, very eager, to apply for this job vacancy announcement. And trust, after tonight, you will be able to do so. I am asking that you give me another 15 or 16 hours. Allow me to go to work and come home, provide you with an email that will be extremely crucial in the opening stages of this hiring process. There are some valuable pieces of information that I have taken a screenshot of, and I'm going to send that to you via email. Trust and believe it will be something that you will appreciate to the utmost. Keep in mind, we are trying to maximize your opportunities, and I'm doing the very best that I can with the time that I'm given. Today when I get off at 11 o'clock, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to finish out that email. I'm going to send it to each of you. And as you progress through the stages, refer to those images so that you will know which icons you should select. Now, I have a good mind to send it to one of my HR representatives first and give them the opportunity to sign off on it before you actually click it. But in the sake of time, I'm going to send it directly to you because I'm about 99.99% sure that it's exactly how you need to answer each question in order to get through the first phase. People have been getting rejection notices, and those rejection notices have been coming after about 24 to 36 hours after clicking submit. And I want to avoid that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our time and we're going to make sure that everything that we click on, and you're going to even have to go back to your resume and make some changes because one of our members and I have caught something. And we want to go back and we want to fine-tune those details. And I guarantee that will give us the very best feeling that we could ever get in applying for this job. VRAs, those that have received tentative offer letters, we want you to apply for this job anyway. Messages came back saying do not give the agency an opportunity to say they never gave you one. So apply for it anyway. For everyone else, stand by to stand by. Later on this evening, when I get home, I'm going to finish those emails, and then I'm going to go back to planning for the Black History Month program, and then I'm going to process all new members' enrollment forms, and then I'm going to send out my emails to the managers of the FAA regional headquarters and thanking them for my visit, and then I'm going to get back to handling some important business for the VRAs.
All right. So again, this is a story that Daily Mail is reporting exclusively, and they were given this tape. This has not been independently confirmed by me. I will point that out. So we want to at least, say innocent until proven guilty, right? So this is all according to the Daily Mail. They have this on the front of their website right now, and they're alleging that this was given to African-American minority candidates in order to, quote, minimize competition. And it was done in 2014, allegedly. So there will be a lot more questions, I think, concerning this. And again, we don't have all the answers right now, but it is nonetheless of some concern, if you would, because it is critical that we have fairness. And this is sort of what I do think Donald Trump is trying to get back to, and that, you really want a meritocracy, a full-on meritocracy where you're not rewarding people because of how much melanin they have in their skin, or whether they're male or female, or whether they're purple-haired or trans or gay or heterosexual or whatever, right? You just want the best person for the job. And the FAA, again, has come under tremendous, tremendous pressure. So we'll see how this all shakes out. But the good news is, we're getting rid of DEI. And we need to get rid of DEI, really and truly. It's, look, it's part of the reason I created 76 Research, because you could see it even within what stocks people were picking in portfolios. They weren't looking at profits. They were looking at, what is the board comprised of? And that didn't really make any sense to me. I'm just a simple girl from New Hampshire, and we like things like profits when it comes to investing. So I'm proud of 76 Research. I encourage you guys to go there. We just made a new add to our American Resilience portfolio, brand new stock pick today. Take a look at all of those portfolios, 10 to 15 stocks in each and every single one of them. Meanwhile, all of this happening as RFK Jr. goes after the food companies. Think about what we're dealing with today, right? You get the EPA getting rid of all those regulations. That's historic. You get the Department of Education going bye-bye. Effectively, the majority of the employees sent home packing. And now you get RFK that's saying, I want Americans to have healthier food, and I want to get rid of all these chemicals. He sat down with my former colleague Hannity for an interview. I guess Hannity admitted that he'd been not eaten so well ahead of the RFK Jr. interview. But this is important. Listen to what he says about the food chemicals. And, I think there's some there. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these food companies are indeed held responsible.
We really appreciate it. Before you got here, I already had a burger, so I'm having another. I'm breaking my diet. I am pretty much full on keto. I eat basically meat and eggs. I made an exception today. I had it on a bun, and I really enjoyed it, actually. And it was really good. Explain the difference between seed oil and tallow, and why this is a big deal. Why they said we're going to RFK Steak and Shake.
Processed foods and seed oil is one of the components of processed foods. And that is, all the science indicates that ultra-processed foods are what are the principal culprit in this extraordinary explosion, the epidemic we have of chronic disease. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60% do. We have 66% of adults are diabetic or pre-diabetic, 38% of teens. When you and I were kids, Sean, the average pediatrician would see one case of juvenile diabetes in his lifetime over a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. Diabetes and other mitochondrial diseases are now costing America more than our military budget. We spend 2 to 3 times on healthcare what other countries do, and we have the worst outcomes. And we have the best medical system in the world. We are poisoning ourselves.
He's onto something. And I'm just going to say, why is it that you go to Europe? Okay, I was in Europe last summer. I actually spent a lot of time in Ireland, so I do have some thoughts on Rosie O'Donnell. We're going to get to that in a second. But, why is it that no matter where you go in Ireland or anywhere in Europe, Italy, Portugal, whatever, like the food is really good. It's really good. It doesn't matter if it's like the little local pit stop on the highway, right? Like everything is really good. And I think it comes down to the food sourcing, right? They don't have all the preservatives and the chemicals that we have in our food companies here. And so, it tastes better. And then you have to ask yourself, like, what are those chemicals doing to us? Well, he is not making a lot of friends, shall we say. I mean, RFK Jr., they didn't want him there in the first place. You know it, I know it. And, whether it's the food companies or whether it's the health insurance companies or whether it's Big Pharma, they're all livid that he's there. I mean, you've got President Trump making all these strides, getting rid of all this regulation, and yet Big Pharma is still out there pushing back. It's one of the biggest lobbying groups you have. They've raised prices on over 575 drugs. It's amazing. Brand name drugs in the month of January alone. Okay, that was just January. And they were out there trying to block all this competition, spending millions of dollars to do so, right? You think about all the ads that you're served for all these medicines. They'll work on their marketing and they'll work on their lobbying. But what about like reducing the price of these drugs for people? Well, they're pressuring Congress as we speak to implement mandates that would undermine the one real check against drug companies that we have, and the one way that people can actually put some market-based incentives into play to help their employers and help families save on prescriptions and healthcare costs. And even worse, Big Pharma wants to strip American employees of their freedom to choose their health benefits that work best for them. It's just unbelievable. These proposals, I'll tell you, they could hand Big Pharma a lot of money. We're talking about somewhere around $32 billion, all at the expense of American employers and families. So this is why I think you got to pay attention to this stuff right now. Conservatives for Lower Healthcare is all over this. I'm just going to give them a shout out because I encourage you to go and just learn a little bit more about it. And again, if there's a way for you to get involved, do it, right? Like do it. Pharma Windfall is their website, pharmawindfall.com. They want letters to Congress. They want you to make a difference if you can in your local community because, listen, I think RFK Jr. is going to do a lot, but he's going to need some support. And that grassroots support is really the game changer. So go check them out, pharmawindfall.com. All right, I promised we would talk about Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell moving to my homeland. I don't know. She's moving to Ireland, guys. Right ahead of St. Patrick's Day. I'm planning to spend some more time there this summer. My family is originally from there, actually from a very small region in the southeastern part of Ireland called Ring, and they still speak Gaelic there. It's really amazing. They actually teach math and history and everything. The only thing they teach in English in this little town is English. So they're very proud of their heritage. They're very proud of their culture, and now Rosie's in on the act. I don't think she's near my family, but here she is saying she has moved to Ireland and she loves it. I don't disagree with her. It's the warmest place. The people are extraordinary. It's wonderful. And you know what? They've had a ton of economic success because they made a lot of right decisions policy-wise when they had the chance. Anyway, now they get Rosie.
Well, hey, everybody. It's me, Rosie O'Donnell, star of the Flintstones. It's Tuesday all day, as my Nana would say. And I'm here in Ireland, and it's beautiful and warm, not physically, it's actually quite cold. Moved here on January 15th, and it's been pretty wonderful, I have to say. The people are so loving and so kind, so welcoming, and I'm very grateful. I'm in the process of getting my Irish citizenship, as I have Irish grandparents.
You can do that.
That's what's going on, and that's where I've been and what I've been doing. And although I was never someone who thought I would move to another country, that's what I decided would be the best for myself and my 12-year-old child. And here we are. So TikTok has gotten a little bit dark and negative for me. I don't feel capable of going through the hate that comes through. And I'm trying Substack, and I think I like it there. Now, it's hard to learn. If the Substack people
blah, blah,
are
blah. So
listening-
now she's going to promote her products. But she has descended upon Ireland. It's funny because the head of Ireland was visiting the White House today, and he got asked kind of an amusing question. It's hard to hear. You might have to turn up the volume, but the person said, Ireland's such a great place with so many happy people. How on earth did you let Rosie O'Donnell in? And the funny thing is that the guy who runs Ireland had no clue who Rosie was. And Trump handled this quite beautifully. I want you to see.
Ireland is known for very happy, fun-loving people. Great attitude, many in this room right now that I've met. Why in the world would you let Rosie O'Donnell move to Ireland? I think she's going to lower your happiness level.
That's true. Thank you. I like that question.
Mr.
Do you know you have Rosie
Are
O'Donnell?
you expecting?
Do you know who she is?
Yeah.
I'm joking.
You're better off not knowing.
President Trump, I'm joking.
Yeah, you're better off not knowing. Very, very interesting sort of reaction. And he thinks quick on his feet, right? He kind of saved his colleague there, the head of Ireland, from any embarrassment, and was able to be quite nimble with that. Anyway, so yeah, she's gone to Ireland. You can do that. If you have a grandparent that is from Ireland, you can get an Irish passport, which is kind of cool. All that said, Ireland is facing its own challenges. I've talked about this before, but think about how the UK has allowed all this migration, right, into the UK, and it's actually a big part of what Brexit was. Voters are very angry. You're seeing a failure of their ability to integrate, and immigration has become a huge deal over there, much like it has here. And then you've got Ireland, which had been sort of protected from that for so long, but now the UK is sending a lot of the people that they've been importing there from the Middle East. They're sending them into Northern Ireland, and because Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland are, everybody's getting along now, and they've got a border that you can cross over very easily. I've done it many times myself. You can just go right through the border, and then you're part of Southern Ireland. And so the demographics are changing. For example, when I was in Belfast, I saw a lot of women in the full-on hijabs, and that was sort of surprising, right? Because it's Ireland. And I was just sort of taken back by the tremendous diversity that they had in the population, certainly in Northern Ireland. And then as you went to Dublin, again, you saw it in Dublin. It's different in the countryside, and where I'm from, it's a very different kind of feel than you see in those big cities. But the cities now are changing. And there are a lot of people in Ireland who are absolutely fine with that. There are a lot of people, though, that are very concerned that they're going to lose their Irish traditions, and that they're going to lose their Irish way of life. There was a mother who spoke out about this most recently. I want to show you a quick clip of her because she really hit the nail on the head. She said, look, I live in Dublin, and my child's life is so different in Dublin now because of the demographic that is shifting. And for a culture that cares so much about its identity, and they do, because listen, the British came in and they wouldn't allow them to speak Irish. So when you see these small communities like the one I'm from where they're still speaking Irish today, it's because they want to make sure that their traditions and their cultures are observed and cherished for the future. And she's telling the people in the countryside, look, it's all changing. It's changed in Dublin. It's going to change for you. And I find this interesting because it really suggests to me that, Ireland, much like the US, much like other places, is facing a very similar challenge. It's not just the Rosie O'Donnells they're getting, right? They're really trying to hold on to their culture, and there's some fear that they may not be able to in this sort of brave new world. Let's listen to the mom.
I'm from Dublin, but I come to Mayo every weekend. But I wanted to talk about what the situation is like where I live, because you have not seen what is coming yet, and I have. Where I live is about 85% foreign nationals. I can walk down the street on any given day, walk into the supermarket, and I don't hear an Irish conversation. I hear foreign people everywhere. My child is one of 30 children in her class, and she's the only Irish child. She came home crying from school a few weeks ago because she doesn't understand what any of her friends are saying. The children revert back to their own languages when they're not being taught. She literally cannot understand the conversations around her. But when when Halloween came around there a few months ago, last year she was allowed to dress up. Sorry, the year before last she was allowed to dress up. This year she wasn't allowed to dress up. And when I asked the school why, they said they didn't want to offend people. But I don't go for a walk around the park during the day with my child anymore. I have a big dog and I don't go for a walk by myself anymore. I very rarely leave my house because where I live is so unsafe. And that is the reality that you're facing if you don't make a stand. And I understand it's really, really hard to, be called names and all of these things. But you have to stand up on behalf of your children and the future of the country. The landscape of this country is changing completely. And if you're okay with that, fine. But I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that for my child. Please, please put your children first. And your country first, and just don't care what anyone else thinks.
Wow. So, it's a message that, if you think about it, guys, we have heard before, right? We have heard that message over and over again here in the U.S. We've heard that message in the U.K. We've heard that message in Germany. And now you're starting to hear that in Ireland. And so I think it's, people are pushing back against this in a pretty massive way, I think, because we love who we are as Americans. The Irish love who they are as Irish. The Brits love who they are. And you know what? You ought to be able to love who you are in your home country. And you shouldn't have to change, right? Because another culture comes in and demands that you change. You are, as an American, American first, right? And I say that as an Irish American who, by the way, appreciates very much that Donald Trump just made all of March Irish Heritage Month. How do you like that? I should be wearing green every day, right? I'm looking forward to St. Patrick's Day. I have an Irish step dancer in the family, so I'm sure we'll get quite a show from her. Anyway, lots of parades, It's prime season. Anyway, it's so good to have you here. It is good to see so many new names, too. As I look at the chat, make sure that you subscribe to the program and hit the bell, because I have yet to adhere to an exact same time for the show every day. But if you hit the bell, you know exactly when I'm going to be on. You'll get the notice. It is great to see so many familiar faces, some new ones. I'll see you back here again tomorrow.